Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for the first session of our new Invaluable series. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how we can manage money. My name is Kaylin Hessel. I am with the Oregon Able Savings Plan, which is part of the Oregon State Treasury. So I will be at all of these sessions, but today we have a special guest joining us. We've got Jared from Intuit. Jared, would you like to talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, thanks. So I am from Intuit, which I will talk about in the next couple of slides. But basically, in my day job, what I try to do is help students, whether they are in high school or post-secondary education, so whether it's a 2 or 4 year university or community college, learn personal finance.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so in case anyone isn't familiar, the Oregon Able Savings Plan is a savings account that's specifically designed to help people with disabilities save money without losing any of their state benefits. It is a program that's run by the Oregon State Treasury. We'll be referring to it a couple times throughout the night, likely, but we're not going to do a deep dive into it. So if you want to learn more about it, feel free to go to our website, OregonAbleSavings.com.
And a little about Intuit, if you haven't heard or you're not familiar with who Intuit is. Intuit is the proud maker of TurboTax, QuickBooks, and Mint. TurboTax is basically software that helps you file your taxes for free, which obviously tax time is coming up here in April. QuickBooks is accounting software for small businesses to help them run their business. And then Mint, which we'll actually probably talk to a little bit today, is an app that you can use, whether it's on your phone or you can go to mint.com, and it actually helps you sort of build and plan your life around budgeting and personal finance.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to stop the screen share since we don't need that anymore. Hold on one second. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay, so tonight is going to be a discussion between Jared and I about managing our finances, but we can't see any of you or hear any of you, but we would like to make it as interactive as possible. So please put any questions, comments, concerns into the chat and the Q&A. We have some ideas of what we're going to talk about, but we really want to make sure that we answer everything that's important to you. So please help us steer this conversation.
Yes,
Okay.
the reason why I love being here, especially for everyone, it's not about us having a conversation, but it's how can we help you and what do you want to learn about?
Yeah. So, Jared, managing money, that's a pretty big topic.
Yes, and could be daunting.
Yeah, exactly. How can we, start to make this more approachable, make it less scary for all of us?
Yeah, I would say, the first thing, if you've never heard the term personal finance, or you're not even sure what it means, or you're like, that kind of scares me. I think the first thing, at least this is what I did when I was first learning about it, or what we do with students, just Google personal finance. Try to learn as much as you can, because this is a journey that everybody will go on. There is no person that is alive today that will not go through a personal finance journey, whether you're starting in the beginning or you happen to know the ins and outs of tax law, which is like, I don't expect anyone to know that. But start with Google and understand, what does personal finance mean and what does it mean to you specifically, because it means something different to everyone.
Yeah, how can I tell what information out there is good information? I don't want to get bad financial advice and make a big mistake because of something weird I read on the internet. How can I tell what's good?
That's actually a very good question. First and foremost, when you look for personal finance information, it should be free. You should not have to pay for services to learn how to budget, for example, or if you're just Googling what is the definition of a budget? If somebody is asking you to pay to see what that definition is, that might be a slightly sketch or like not okay website. Or if they want you to sign up for something, um, really, I would say if you go, and I've done this myself, if you go on Google and you type in personal finance or what is personal finance, anything that is probably on that first page of Google is free, and it's pretty safe. I mean, I do it all the time with students who do it live. You know, if we wanted to do it now, we could. Um, it's those where you try to get into really small details, or you maybe make it to page 20 of Google, that you might need to start coming back, because a lot of it will end up being repetitive. But you know, one source that I use a lot, like NerdWallet, I think they're a great resource. They go through everything from defining a budget to helping you build one if you're not comfortable.
That's great to hear, because I've definitely ended up on their website and was hoping they were credible enough.
Yes,
Because it is kind of
definitely
a
are.
different name, very
Yeah,
informal. So I'm glad the nerds at NerdWallet know what they're talking about.
yeah, yes.
Okay, so you said one of the questions that you might look up is like, what exactly is a budget? And I was hoping that you could answer that so I don't have to Google it.
Yes. So you can you can literally look up the definition of budget, but I think actually I'm going to tell you a long answer to that, not just read you a definition. But a budget, similar to personal finance, means something different to everyone. But really, what a budget does is it helps you understand how much money either you make or how much money you have, and then what you are able to spend. So I think a great example of that is I'm not going to go spend $500 on a new T-shirt when I don't have that kind of money to do that. But really, what a budget will help you essentially, in thinking back to like your savings, a budget will help you really guide and understand how much money you can spend, so you can actually start to save money. And whether you're saving for emergencies, everyone's saving for something different. Maybe you have a goal that you want to take a trip somewhere. Maybe you want to buy a video game. Really, those sorts of goals are there, and that's part of like what savings is for. So a budget to anyone could mean something different, and how you do it could be different. But really, from a high level, a budget is something that helps you guide sort of your spending habits.
Okay, so the way you talk about it makes it sound like it can actually be a good, helpful thing. I know that I think when I was younger, it felt like all of these rules that were like
Mm-hmm.
boxing you in and, making life not as fun. But it sounds like it can really help you with whatever you want to achieve in life, because unfortunately, almost everything costs money these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if you look at it from the retrospect of, yes, it's setting up rules to my life, so I can't go do this or I can't go do this. But if you take the mindset of, well, it's helping me maybe save for this, or a lot of students, and I think like a credit card is a great example of this, where I know before I was 18, like my parents got all of this mail. I was like, I want to get some mail. Like, why does nobody send me any letters? I turned 18. I realized it was all basically a bunch of credit card offers. Signed up for the first credit card. And then I have a bunch of friends, and luckily it didn't happen to me, but where they put themselves like in credit card debt. Like that's pretty common here in the US. And so, creating a budget can help you pay off, your credit card debt, for example. So there are things that it does definitely help you to do. And I wouldn't think of it necessarily as a bad thing, because at some point it can really be like behavioral. You at some point you won't necessarily maybe need to write down your budget or track it through an app, which I would always recommend doing. But at some point it becomes instinct, and kind of about how much you can spend on certain things when you get really comfortable doing that.
Yeah. So how can I start figuring out how to set a budget that's going to actually work for me?
So before you even get there, you have to learn, what is a budget, right? Like if you're not familiar with a budget, just Google what is a budget, see what the definition that comes up, And then before everyone, and nowadays we live in our computers, we live in our phones, we live in technology. Um, if you're not comfortable doing that and you don't want to do it with, necessarily signing up for anything, the first thing you can do, I have, on your stack of Post-its, which you can't really see, but with your Post-its, you can write down and jot down, okay, this is about how much I make, right? You can go through your bank account and say, okay, this is how much I made, this is how much blah 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 blah, and that's your income. And then on a separate line you can write expenses, and you can start jotting all of that down. And so from a high level, you can see, okay, this is what my income is, this is what my expenses are. And then for an example, if you want to see I want to save X amount, right? That's probably more of a goal. So you're like, okay, I want to save $200 this month, or maybe I want to save $100 this month. Then you have to see, okay, does my income exceed my expenses by $100? And if it doesn't, what do I need to cut back? And that's a very easy way of doing that by pen and paper. Or it gets way more, difficult, where you can actually use technology. You can download an app on your phone. I work for Intuit, and we have Mint as one of our apps. And basically what it does is it connects to your bank accounts and it builds a budget and helps you build a budget. So it can start and build one for you. And then you get to tailor it to you specifically, because everyone's, again, personal finance needs is personal.
Yeah, definitely. So things that might end up being income for a lot of the people in the audience, it could be my own paycheck, but also if I'm getting benefits like SSI, that would be in that income column. But also if I'm getting, SNAP, that's supposed to be paying for food, that would be an income, but I should directly tie that to the food expenses. So that makes sense. I'm trying to think of different kind of expenses. Everybody has a lot.
Yeah. Well, other things too, even before you get to expenses, a lot of students that I work with, everyone has side hustles nowadays. Like maybe you walk your neighbor's dog, that's considered income as well. I would high level income. What is it? When you see money coming into your account, that is income, like something that you've earned or something that is being given.
Yeah. Or, whenever you have your birthday coming up and you might get some cash from your family members, that could count as well.
That's always a good time of year.
Yes, it is. Such a good time. So then there's some expenses like my rent. I know my rent is going to cost a certain amount of money each year. So I could see how that would be pretty easy to put into the budget. You just say subtract however much it is. But then there's other stuff like I don't know exactly how much money I'm going to be spending on food or clothes this month. So is there anything special I should do with that, or any ideas for how I can kind of make that work?
Yeah, that's another thing, and that's what is what I would call like a variable expense, where, and you could probably look up whatever you want for a grocery and what that definition might be. But as you mentioned very specifically, like it can change. I maybe will spend $50 on groceries this week. Maybe I'll spend $100 on groceries next week. But beside how much you spend, you should have an idea of what you want to spend. So this is the worst thing you could do. Don't ever go grocery shopping hungry, because you will walk out with way more than you want. So if you have an idea in your mind and you're thinking, okay, maybe I want to spend about $50 at the grocery store this week, and then what does that equate to over the month? Maybe that's about $200. What I would do is I would start granular, but you have to pick a number in your head, or really what are you comfortable spending? So if you know your income and you see, okay, this is what I'm allowed to spend for the month on food, break it up if you go grocery shopping once a week, or break it up however many times you want to go grocery shopping. But really what you need to do is track how much you spend when you go to the grocery store. So don't just go and say, okay, I have $200 and then, okay, I spend whatever I want to on this week. But then maybe come week 4, you're like, oh man, I only have $20 left to spend. So think about how you want to break up your budget for groceries each time. So it's not, even though it is, it varies and it changes from week to week potentially if you don't buy the same thing, you should have an idea of how much you definitely want to spend going to the grocery store.
Sure.
Don't go hungry.
That's a good tip. It makes sense to make sure that I don't, spend all of my grocery money at the beginning of the month, because only having $20 for, 1 week, that's gonna be a hard week. So yeah, I understand what you're saying about trying to break it up into those smaller chunks. Um, okay, so we did get a question from an audience member. He and his wife are guardians for their adult son. And right now, they're trying to figure out, what legal permissions that they need to manage his finances. So couple things. So if you're managing the Able account, or you want to manage an Able account for him, you can get a power of attorney. If he is able to manage his finances himself, I believe he should likely be able to sign off to give you that power of attorney. There's a form on our website for it. But if you want to have, broader permission or authority besides that, you're likely going to want to talk to, gosh, there's so many places could possibly happen. Like, there are different elder law attorneys, but I think what would likely end up happening is that you'll have to change some of the language in your guardianship documents that you've gotten from the court. So you could try talking to the court administrator that you give the yearly filings to see what they recommend. I believe Disability Rights Oregon also has trainings that I found that explain, difference between guardianship and conservatorship. Conservatorship is what gives you permission to manage money. But yeah, if you research conservatorship Oregon, that'll help you get a pretty good idea of where to turn. Other good resources for basically all of life. They call themselves special needs life planners. So they're good with money stuff, figuring out benefits, figuring out guardianship conservatorships. There are 2 different organizations in Oregon that provide those services. One is called the Palladio, which is Palladio, and then Abeona Group, which is Abeona. So if you Google those, they'll be able to help direct you to the right place as well. Okay, so we were talking about income and expenses in the grocery store, and starting to get a little hungry, but so I will not go to the grocery store tonight until after I have eaten. Okay, so what are some of the other big things that I need to make sure to include in my budget?
So I would say income, obviously you have. So let's think about expenses. So one thing for savings, I think this is a very important sort of philosophy to teach early on, is savings shouldn't be an afterthought. It shouldn't be, here's my income, here's my expenses, and whatever is left over is my savings. Mm-hmm. It should be, here is my income. This is how much I know I want to save. So now I need to adjust my expenses. So there's subtle differences there where I'm thinking about my savings before my spending versus my savings is just like my catch-all, and then if I don't save anything, then I don't save anything. When really it should always be first is, income, thinking about how much you make, and then if you want to think of your savings as an expense, so it's always there, you can, but you need to have a goal for savings before you go into your expenses. I would say that's pretty important when thinking about your expenses.
Yeah, because otherwise it's so easy to just spend all of your money by the end of the month. It's easy to forget about that when there's, something really exciting in front of you that you want to buy. But I think when planning my budget, that might be one of the last things that I write in the plan part of it. I might do, here's my rent first, here's food, here's other things, and then here's how much I think I can save or how much I want to save after I've made sure that all my basic life needs are met. Do you think that's a good plan, or should I redo it?
Well, so even before you go down that road, you should, you should have a reason for wanting to budget, right? Usually, I would say the average individual is not going to say, or wake up in a day and be like, I need to budget today. I don't think that really happens. Maybe it does. They probably see something on TV or a commercial or whatever, like, I should probably do that. But think about maybe why you want to budget. Like, is there a specific reason? Again, and this goes back to goal setting. Is it for savings? Is it to go on a trip? Is it to buy something from, your local store, pay off credit card debt, whatever it might be? And it's the other thing too is it's a good way to start a healthy conversation around personal finance, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with a teacher. Personal finance is one of the last topics that people want to talk about. It's like a taboo that you just don't ever talk about personal finance with anybody. So like people don't talk about their budgets with their friends or their family. And so, just starting the conversation is a great way and a great thing to do, but then having a reason to budget, because if you don't have that goal, it's pretty easy to be like, I'll do my budget tomorrow. I'll do it the next day. And you just kind of keep pushing it off.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so interesting how talking about money is a taboo, like you're saying, because I feel like whenever I have talked about money with my friends, everybody is so hungry to know, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I manage it right so that, I'm saving, I'm not going into debt, I'm not stressed out every month? Because I think that's another, really good reason for budgeting. If you're always, freaked out about how much you're going to have at the end of the month, that's hard. And for some people, like, unfortunately, that is going to be reality just because you don't have a lot of income. But even if that is your situation, you can still try to budget to make that a little less stressful for you, to help spread it out a little bit, right?
Exactly. It does. Okay, your income doesn't matter. You should always have a budget. Whether somebody makes, $1 million or somebody makes like $5,000, that person should know how to spend their money, exactly to your point. Because it's a smart thing to do. Otherwise, you don't even think about it and you spend more than you make.
Yeah. So what should I do if I keep finding myself spending more than I make?
So there's a couple of things you can do. So number one, if you can talk to, there's counselors out there, but if you don't want to go through like a counselor, you want it to be more unofficial. I've talked to students and worked with students who have like buddy groups where they review everyone's budget for the week. Like, and that's very transparent. Most people aren't willing to be transparent. Granted, they're high school, students, so most of their money comes from their parents to begin with. But, they'll like check everyone's budget and they'll kind of go through and make sure they're spending money. And again, that's not very, often that people are willing to do that. But so it's everything ranging from like friends and family to help you, or you can find a counselor that can help you. There's a lot of free resources. Or again, you can get like Mint as an example. If you build in your budget, and if you let's just say you like to go to the coffee shop a little bit too much, and you're like, okay, this month I'm only going to spend $20 at Starbucks. What Mint will do once you get to like $15, $16, $17, you'll get like this nice little nudge sort of reminder that says, hey, you have about $3 left and you have 3 weeks left in the month. So you should probably not be spending this much money at Starbucks.
That sounds really helpful, and I should potentially set that up. So it's just so easy to do that. Oh man. But when you're talking about financial counselors, that reminded me of a nonprofit that we have here that's pretty great. It's called Northwest Access Fund. They're all about helping people with disabilities and their finances. So they actually have financial counselors that'll meet with you virtually for free and help you, figure out your budget, whatever your financial goals are. They can help you with that, but they also understand, the reality of having a disability. Some of them have disabilities themselves. So they understand, what different benefits and resources you might be able to apply for that you don't have, or they understand the concerns that you might have. So, Jared, one of the most common concerns that I hear from people is that they're worried about having more than $2,000 in their name, since SSI and Medicaid have those asset limits. And if you have more than that, you get disqualified. And those things are super important. Nobody wants to get disqualified. So one tool that can help sometimes is the Oregon Able Savings Plan. If you qualify for an account, you can move some funds in there so that oftentimes when people are getting close to hitting 2,000, they'll say that somebody needs to spend down money. If you're ever thinking about spending down, usually that means people are just buying random stuff so that they don't lose Social Security. Instead, you could put it in the Able account. But what can I do to make sure that I'm not, going over that $2,000 besides getting an Able account? What other options are there?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely other ways, specifically related to savings. Like one thing that's important that everyone is really starting to kind of jump on this bandwagon is like when you think about investing or help, where your money actually works for you now at this point. But there's other sorts of, like you mentioned, there's other sort of ways and accounts, but definitely don't just spend money just to spend your money.
Yeah, that's not so great. So somebody's pointing out in our chat that, sometimes people overspend because their basic needs do cost too much, that it's just more than their income. And if that is your situation, there are a lot of other people in that situation as well. And I know it's extremely difficult. There are a lot of different resources out there that might help. Like talking to Northwest Access Fund, they might be help you figure out what's good for your situation. And hopefully they'll be able to help you, figure out how to help get, help paying for rent or housing. So that frees you up some more funds so that, you're not going hungry at the end of the month.
That's exactly what I was thinking and recommending, like, Northwest Access Fund. They are, finding those certified counselors and professionals who they specialize and they're experts in building a budget. So if you don't feel like you're confident in being able to do it yourself, then definitely find, and there are so many resources that are free. There's a group called the AFCPE that we work with that does free counseling because of COVID. Where you can partner with a mentor and a coach to help build budgets and kind of walk through your plan for you. So I think that's actually another important aspect, because there are thousands of other counselors that will want you to pay a lot of money for their counseling, but you can also get a lot of free counseling, and it's all there. Like, again, the Northwest Access Fund, AFCPE is another great resource. There's a ton out there.
Yeah. And it sounds like they do free hour-long sessions, which sounds incredibly helpful. Another great resource is 211. So it's like how you call 911, except you call 211 instead. They know about, I think, basically every resource in nonprofit and government program in this state. So if you're in emergency, or if you're not quite there but don't know where else to turn, 211 can help you figure that out. So remember that, 211 anytime you need help. It's very easy to remember, thankfully. Okay, so if I am able to control some of those expenses more, like a big problem these days is affordable housing. Part of it is that there's just not enough of it, but how do I know if housing is actually affordable for me and my budget? How much should I aim to be spending on that?
So there, again, Google is your best friend, but there's something out there called like the 50-30-20 rule. I want to say that originated probably from Dave Ramsey, who's like a pretty famous personal finance guru. But when you think about your rent, and depending on how you want to Google this, but if you ask my opinion, you can ask any expert, someone's going to tell you it should be like 20% of your income. Somebody else might say, oh, it can be 50% of your income. So it really, I wouldn't say there's like one expert, like perfect way. And again, everyone is different. I know when I work with students, I recommend and tell them look for anywhere that's between like 25 and 35% of like your income. But even if you're like, well, my income maybe changes monthly, so how do I do that? One thing you can do, and this is part of your budget, is build in that rent as part of your expense. And say, okay, well, if I know it's going to be this much money, and you want to break it up by your paychecks, that's one easy way to look at it. So let's just, as an example, let's just say rent is $1,000. If I know, for example, that I get, let's say I make $2,000 per month, right? So that means I'm going to get $1,000 potentially every 2 weeks. So, okay, can I afford to put $500 every paycheck towards my rent? And when you think about it in like, okay, is it possible? And this is where that budget comes in, and without actually showing it on pen and paper, it might be a little difficult. But that's one way to think about it is, okay, how much money do I need to put away per paycheck to pay for my rent? And is that going to leave me room to pay for my other expenses?
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I was trying to figure out whether or not I should rent this apartment that I really liked. And it was more than I had originally wanted to spend, but I could make it work, and it was a hard decision. But what I had to do was figure out what would I be giving up if I was willing to pay a little bit more for this apartment that would just, better meet my needs, make me more comfortable than somewhere else. And one of the main things that I like saving for is vacations. It is so sad that we cannot do that right now. I cannot wait to go on vacation again. So I'm currently going to save for that, but that's one of the things that I realized I would have to sacrifice. Like I could still go on vacations, but I'd have to spend a little bit less each month getting ready for that because I'd be putting it towards rent instead. So coming up with those budgets, you're also, balancing different priorities based off of your values.
Exactly. And that goes, it all ties back to your goals, right? If you want to go on vacation, you brought up a good point around opportunity cost, which is, how much, if I spend more on this apartment, am I going to take away the extra money that I get to spend when I go to the grocery store? Or maybe it's those 2 t-shirts that I like to buy per month. Do I want to have a nicer apartment, or do I want to continue to buy things for myself? Or is it, if I spend more money, then I can't put more money into my savings? Like one thing that's pretty important, I think, that we haven't really talked about is like an emergency fund. Why is that important? We talked about the $2,000 and what happens if your bank account gets close to $2,000. But there's a lot of instances where something might happen. Maybe you break your arm, or maybe, you have you forget that some sort of insurance comes out, and that's like $500 that you didn't plan for, whatever it might be. As savings, an emergency savings fund, it helps you stay out of debt. So you don't just say, oh, here's my credit card, let me just put it on my credit card, and then have to now pay this back. Because when you spend money on your credit card, it's not your money. That's one important thing to remember, is when you spend money on the credit card, it is not your money. You are spending the bank's money, and you have to pay it back.
I started rewatching Schitt's Creek again, and one of the early episodes reminded me of what you're talking about. So it's this family that's super rich. They have no idea. Like the adult kids know nothing about money because they've just always had so much of it. It didn't really, feel like a real thing. And David, the son, bought some fancy like facial cream, I think. And his dad's like, how did you afford that? And he's like, what are you talking about? I just put it on my credit card. And his dad's like, oh no, like you have to pay that back. Like you have to get a job. So yeah, not doing that would be really great. Be smarter than David Rose. Pretty early in those, pretty easy to do for the David in the earlier episodes, at least. Yeah, no, I had something else I was going to say. I forgot. I just, this conversation is just giving me so many different great ideas. So what would be, you had talked about Mint a bit and how that could help, give me those warnings for when I'm getting close to spending too much money. What else, can it do, or what should I look for in a service like that?
So Mint is, I'm slightly biased because I do work for Intuit, and I also happen to actually use Mint. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm at Intuit, was I loved the product and I loved the tool, and I was like, man, how cool would it be to actually work for a company that has this tool? Not only that, now I get to teach using the tool in class. So it's kind of like awesome win-win for me. But the tool, it's really the motto is like your financial life in one place that's easy to understand. And so, when you have let's just say maybe you use Excel, or maybe you use, I think a common thing that a lot of individuals use is like their Chase app, or maybe their Bank of America app, or wherever your Wells Fargo, whoever you happen to bank with, or maybe it could be your local credit union. And so within your credit, your app, they might have some sort of budgeting feature. The one thing that it's missing is, let's just say you have a bank account with, your local credit union. Maybe you also have a bank account with a large major bank. Well, how do I keep a budget when I use two different banks? So what Mint does is it pulls everything into one spot on your phone. So you can see all of your accounts. Maybe you want to hook up your bills here as well. Maybe you want to, you can look at your credit score. I think that's another important topic that you'll probably get to through these series at some point. So I won't go too far into credit scores. But basically what Mint tries to do is give you your financial picture in one place. So you don't have to go to this bank. You don't have to go to this bank. You don't have to go to like TransUnion and pull your credit score and find everything differently. And so it's super convenient. Most of us live in our phones every day. If you put your arms out, your phone is probably within reach realistically. And so that's kind of really what it does. It brings technology and relevancy to you.
Yeah, and you can just get that information immediately. That's very helpful. So then you're standing in the store wondering, like, can I afford this? Just in your app, and immediately. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, bills are due each month. Sometimes I have, trouble remembering to pay them. Do you have any suggestions for things that I can do to make sure I don't do that?
Yeah, well, so some people aren't comfortable doing this. You obviously can put your bills on auto payment, which then you don't have to think about it, but you need to be careful because I think a great example of this is like subscriptions. Subscriptions are the new thing, right? You might have Hulu, you might have Netflix. Now that we're kind of stuck inside and it's winter, it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Let's go watch TV and figure out how to watch all the TV. So we actually pulled some data and research on our end from Mint, and we learned that the average individual spends about $600 per year on subscriptions. And what's kind of crazy about that is a lot of those people don't know that they spend that money and they have it on auto payment. So they might spend $7 here, $10 there, $6 here, and all of that adds up quickly, especially when you're not even really paying attention. So if you have major bills that are important, you can put them on auto payment, but the others, I probably wouldn't. I personally don't have anything on auto payment because I want to know what's coming in and I want to know what's going out. But what you can do, and you can do this in Mint, you could probably do this in, I would say, most apps, is you can set reminders, and you can actually, for example, within Mint, let's just say you use AT&T as part of like your internet service. You can actually hook up your AT&T bill into the tool, and basically you will get a notification that says your bill is due today. It won't pay the bill for you. So
Mhm.
that's one thing you need to be careful of. That would be nice if the app pays our bills for us, but it doesn't quite do that. But it will definitely set a reminder and say, okay, you have your bill due, and it'll send you like that nice little nudge that you kind of need.
Yeah, nudges are very helpful that way. So I've got another suggestion for people who might be new to managing their own money, or you want to start doing it, but you're also, afraid of making a big mistake. Um, if you have an Able account, you can sign up for our Able prepaid card. It works most like a gift card. So you decide how much to put on the card, and you can't spend more than what's on the card. So if you have, $500 in your Able account, but only $50 on your card, you can't spend more than $50. So it's got some built-in guardrails that way. And this is especially helpful for, any teenagers transitioning into adulthood. It's a great way for the parents who are managing the account to give those teenagers their spending money on something that like feels really fancy, like a credit card. But you can't make too big of a mistake with it. And every time you swipe it, you get a list of the transaction in the records, so then you can go back and see, oh yeah, I went to Starbucks every day and spent $10, and that's why I have no money. One of the other really cool features about our card is that you can set new spending controls. So for instance, I'm very aware of the fact that every time I go into Target, I spend more money than I intend to, because I'm a human being and Target knows how to get money out of my wallet. I can tell the card, I don't trust myself at Target. Don't let me spend more than this much money there. And it won't. It won't let you do it. You can
That's a
narrow,
pretty awesome feature.
right? Like I wish everything had that. You could tell it, don't let me spend more than this much money a day. If, the card is only supposed to be used for groceries, you can narrow it all the way down to just work at grocery stores. So it's I'd say like a safer environment to start practicing those skills. That might make you feel, a little bit more comfortable venturing out into that world if it's new to you. Yeah, we could all use help reining in those impulse purchases. So don't feel bad when it happens. Definitely happens to every one of us. Everybody makes money mistakes multiple times throughout
Hmm.
their lives. Probably multiple times, like a week, honestly. Hopefully smaller ones in 1 week. So don't feel bad, but like the way we learn as human beings is to make mistakes and then learn from them.
Hopefully, though, your mistake is not too big. So that's actually one thing that I teach a lot is like I learn personal finances by mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, it's what I have a friend who he just bought this new car and he's like, I have to put all of these new things in it. And he's like, let me just swipe my credit card, thinking it would be a good, thing to do. Little did he know how that affects your credit score, how that affects like the long-term abilities of you to be able to take loans out. Um, so it's good that everyone is here starting to learn about it now versus just making those mistakes, because sometimes those mistakes can cost a lot long road.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. We definitely will mostly learn through our mistakes.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that we should talk about money more with our friends and family, because then we can learn from their mistakes. And you can see, the effect that it had on them. And then you'll know, do not do what Jared's friend did.
Yes, never do that.
Yeah. So another question in the chat is, what is the Able card called? It's just called the Oregon Able prepaid card. If you log into your online account, on your dashboard, there should be a box that says, are you interested in signing up for the prepaid card? You can click on that and it'll take you to the website to sign up for it. You should also be able to access information about that just from OregonAbleSavings.com. I believe at the top there's an option to go to a page all about the card. Yeah. Okay. So if anybody else has any questions, please keep shooting them our way. We are getting towards the end of this thing, so we want to make sure that we get all of the information that you want to you. But let's see, like Jared, is there anything else you think people really, really, really need to know about managing their money?
I mean, this is a topic of conversation you could probably talk about forever. I think if you haven't started, you just need to like get that first like nudge or push to get started because that's probably the most important. If you're afraid or if you think it's scary, like I would be happy to say, let's finish 5 minutes early so you can spend those 5 minutes you're going to be here to go Google it, like learn about personal finances, whatever that might be. But just starting, whether it's the topic of conversation or whether it's, learning about X, Y, or Z parts of budgets. Once you get started and you get rolling and you start learning about it, to me, I find it a little exciting and fun. Granted, it is my day job, so I hope it's exciting, but it's really just getting started. And it's as simple as typing in Google, like what is a budget or what is personal finance?
Yeah, and just take it one step at a time. So got another question, says our son has no grasp of money and value due to his disability. Those are pretty complex topics. And says that their credit union's willing to help him establish his credit, but they're wondering if that's a good idea. So credit is very important overall to a person's financial well-being, but it's also easy to get in debt, which would be not a good idea. So now it's a good time to mention that I am not a financial advisor. I don't know if you are, Jared.
I am not, but there are definitely things that you can do. Especially if it's your local credit union. I would say they would probably be better to work with to help and establish because basically what you can do, like, and this is actually what my father did for me to help me establish credit growing up, was he basically gave me a credit card. I want to say I had like $100 limit on it. Because basically what I had to do was he taught me like, okay, I have to put money on this card to pay for things, but you have to understand the value, as you mentioned, and the value and the concept of money. Well, how do I get the money that I need? Well, I have to do chores around the house, or I have to do these other various things in order to be able to get the money to spend it. And so, I think a credit union, for example, to help establish credit, and as long as you get to oversee the credit card and you can make sure that you're not missing a late payment or whatever it might be, then I think it's a pretty good way to start.
Yeah, and there are a lot of credit unions and banks that'll offer like credit building accounts, which is kind of like a mix of having a credit card, but it's got more protections built in to help you
exactly
learn how to make those good choices.
Yeah.
And I'd say one of the first concepts that people need to learn when it comes to money and value is, looking at that thing you want to buy, looking at, your account, whatever money you have access to, and then asking the question, like, do I have enough or not enough? And so maybe just, start there and helping them match up those numbers to try and see, if one's bigger than the other, clearly not enough. And then that credit building account or the prepaid card could be a good way to practice. And I know with our prepaid card, the person managing the account has control over how much you put on there. So this parent could, put in $50, and it's definitely possible that your kid is going to go and waste that $50, spend it on something that you might not have spent it on. But that's okay. That's how you learn, like we were talking about earlier, and you're in control over, how much they could accidentally spend that way. So stuff like that, break it down to whatever level they're at, and that, baby steps. We all need baby steps for everything.
Exactly. And there are cards too, specifically, I think, as you kind of mentioned, like I think they're called like, I mean, there's probably a bunch of names, but student cards or
Mm.
student, like some sort of learning cards. But actually there's this new, I want to call it like fintech sort of movement where, like step banking, it's like banking for teens, and it's to help them teach and understand like the values of personal finance while also being able to bank. And so that's like there's a ton of those companies out there now that, if your local credit union, if you need to help establish credit, that you can do. I'm sure, I mean, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but they're built around helping young individuals build and establish and learn about credit and personal finance.
Yeah. And I found that oftentimes the banks or credit unions might not list those things on their website, but if you actually, talk to a real person at the bank, they can help you figure out what services they do have, or they might have one of these credit building accounts. They just haven't put it on the website. So there's 5 minutes left in our presentation. We are going to stick around for a couple more minutes to let people ask any questions that they didn't want to ask while the recording was going on. But before we do that, I want to go back to our slides to give you a taste of what we're going to learn about in the future. So next month, February 24th, we're going to talk about tips for setting goals you can achieve. I know I tend to dream a little too big sometimes and set up goals that are impossible to achieve. So Kate Benedict from Financial Beginnings, Oregon, is going to help us figure out how to set goals in a way that makes it way more likely that we'll actually reach them. And then in March 24th, we are going to talk about bill planning during an emergency. So Sarah Brooks from Dev Northwest, which is all about helping people learn about, all things personal finance, is going to help us figure that out, which is definitely something all of us could use more information about these days. So thank you so much for joining us. And for anyone who is watching this on YouTube, we're happy to have been able to spend the past hour with you. But I am going to turn off the recording now. And if anybody else has any questions, please shoot them our way.